Hey everyone, I'm Jody from Autentico, USA, and I wanted to talk to you about a project that we're working on today. We actually work hand in hand with our local charity, the local division of Habitat for Humanity, and they're doing an upscale resale design fundraiser. We go and get pieces of furniture from them, and then we redo the pieces for them free of charge so that they can sell them for more money. So we've been working on this traditional 1970s octagon table. I think everyone's mom or grandma had this table in their house. And they're fun tables to work on. They're really popular for the boho style, which is very trendy right now. And we wanted to give it like a Pottery Barn restoration look. We originally painted the piece in Versante matte white cliff. Then we applied our aging glaze, let that dry, and then we applied our snowflake glaze over that. So now I'm going to seal that off with our Autentico white wax. I'm going to use my big industrial can here. The wax can be applied with a chip brush, a cloth, a microfiber mitt, whatever you prefer. I'm going to use the chip brush and have a blue shop towel in hand. And my goal is to get the wax in the crevices to really bring out the detail and then soften the aging glaze even more than the snowflake glaze did, and just kind of give it an overall whitewashed effect. So I'm just going to start by applying the wax pretty heavily, punching into the grooves and crevices, making sure that it's really building up in those grooves and crevices. And once I get the wax on the door, I'm going to take my shop cloth and I'm going to start to gently wipe the high points. And I'm going to wipe in one direction so it'll give like a stroked effect. Just kind of let it build up in the corners here, giving it a little shadowing effect. And when you're doing this process, if you wipe off too much, you can always just kind of go back over it lightly. Just reapply it how much or how little you want. It's completely your preference. I prefer a little heavier touch. But that really brings out this beveling in these wood panel doors. And you can clearly see the difference before and after. It just looks so much more whitewashed, subtle, really see the detail. So we're going to continue on. And sometimes what I like to do is what I just did is I get a large amount on and then I work by spreading it out. Once you work with wax, you'll figure out your own way of how to apply it. Also depends on what kind of look you're going for. Okay, and now we're going to wipe it off. The wax takes about 45 minutes to dry. So if you are going to wipe it off, you want to wipe it off within the first 5 to 10 minutes after applying it, because once it starts setting up and drying, you won't be able to remove it unless you put mineral spirits on it. So you want to try to avoid that if you can. Just letting it build up in the corners, really making those details pop. Yes, and that is phenomenal. That is great. So, and the great thing about the wax too is that it's also the sealer, so it protects the paint, keeps it from getting nicked and scratched. So now I'm going to do the bottom, punching in, and then just spreading it out, and then wiping back those high points. And I'm barely touching the surface. I'm not bearing down hard, because if I bear down too hard, it's going to remove the wax completely. We definitely don't want that. Yeah, that's definitely coming along great. Jet did what? Squeaker-ectomy. Hi. Can I help you, sir? What are you doing? Hi, he's a sweet boy. Yeah, you coming to help? You're not much help. No, don't lick the furniture. Okay, so on my flat spaces, I'm going to paint the wax on, for lack of a better term, and really just work it into the finish. Yeah. You can really see the wood grain in this piece when the wax gets on it. It is I believe it's an oak veneer, so it has some beautiful texture in it. And you actually couldn't even see the texture until we painted it because it was just the plain brown wood. I said that with such disdain. Plain brown wood. Oh yeah, that definitely softens it up, gives it that more beige effect, and takes out the yellow that was in the antiquing glaze. Oh yeah, that is beautiful. Up close, you can really see the it's almost like a pickled effect in the wood. We will be doing some videos on glazing as well. We get a lot of inquiries about glazing. There's a lot of misinformation out there about it, so I'll be clearing up some of those myths and rumors and showing you some of the cool things that can be done with glaze. We use glaze here a lot. Don't be afraid to really press the brush into your surface when you're waxing. Manhandle that wax. Don't be gentle with it, just because when you press it into the surface, it really melds with the surface. Our wax is specifically designed to penetrate the pores of our paint. You can use our waxes on other paint lines, but it really works best with our own paint line. This is just absolutely stunning. It is really bringing out those details that you couldn't see before. It is really beautiful, really gorgeous. Okay, so I'm gonna go and do the top. And you want to go in the direction also of your paint strokes. If you were to go in the opposite direction, it would give it a totally different look. We have done that kind of cross hatch look before. I personally don't care for it, but hey, to each their own. If you like it, that's great for you. I'm happy. If you can work fast, you could do an entire tabletop section like I'm about to do. But if you're a newbie to wax or don't have too much experience with it, I recommend you working in sections, like maybe doing just half the table, wiping it off, and then continuing on. You don't want the wax to start drying up on you. So if you're not too confident in it, then definitely work in smaller sections. If you flick some on there, just take your shop towel and wipe that off immediately because you don't want it to dry on there. See, I'm turning the brush sideways to get into those crevices. We have had some unusually crazy weather this February, and today it is 70 degrees outside. And so my wax is pretty melty. It's really going on very nicely. If it was a cooler day, it might not spread as easily, but it still does spread easy, but not maybe as easy as it's doing right now because it is so warm outside. And so then I'm going to take my towel, and now I'm going to start removing the excess, wiping it back, smoothing it out, evening it up. Wiping off the edges. You still have quite a bit of working time with this before it starts setting up and drying on a day like today. The top of this is incredible. She's going to get some still shots of this to put into the video, but this is a beautiful, beautiful piece. Totally retro boho, just gorgeous piece. So we'll get the hardware put on it, and actually we have to wait about 45 minutes for it to dry, and we'll come back and buff. So we'll let that dry, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about buffing and show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so we are back after the wax is dried. We're actually back the next day, so it's been drying overnight. And I'm going to use a buffing brush to do the actual buffing with. Or you can use a microfiber mitt, a felt towel, a soft t-shirt with no lettering on it, and just whatever your personal preference is. If you do use a brush though, I recommend having different brushes for different color waxes. So for example, this is a white wax. I would not want to use my dark brown or light brown buffing brush, because then when I go to buff it, it's going to transfer whatever residue is on there onto my piece and it's going to muddy it up, and that's not what we're going for. You can clean them in between uses, but just for time and convenience, I just like to have one buffing brush per color. So to buff, you just take your buffing brush and you start swiping back and forth in the same direction that you waxed in. You can also go in swirl motions, and I'm pushing down pretty hard. The brush itself feels really rough, and people are usually surprised and they're saying, oh, isn't this going to scratch my surface? It does not. It's just buffing the wax. That's what it uses to make the wax shine up. And it's really, really glossing up well. And it's not a super shiny finish. It's a soft glow, soft gloss. So I mentioned that you could also use a microfiber cloth, a felt towel, or a soft t-shirt with no lettering. If you use a t-shirt that has lettering on it, that vinyl or the plastic or whatever it is that they put on the shirt, you will see swirl marks because it's creating texture in the wax, and you might risk not permanently scratching your piece, but you'll see swirl marks, and then you'll have to end up going over it with a softer cloth or a buffing brush. Oh yeah, that looks super, super good. And it feels wonderful. So I'm going to go up and down on the doors, go across. So your maintenance for wax is to not use any type of furniture polishes. Furniture polish has a solvent in it that over time will break down the wax and remove it. So all you want to do to care for a wax piece is just to use a soft damp cloth and just dust it off. Not super soaking wet, just very damp. I mean, dry is fine too. And over time, if you see the piece starting to get dull, all you have to do is just rebuff it. If it does not shine back up, then that means it's time for another application of wax. And I have found through personal experience and through customer testimony, depending on how much you use the piece, you probably will never have to re-wax unless it is getting used a lot, getting touched a lot. You know, maybe around like where the handles are, you may have to add a little bit of wax after a few years. Very little labor to keep the maintenance up. So this is completely buffed now, and it is really shining up nicely. Just a beautiful, beautiful finish. That restoration hardware finish technique that is so popular right now. Okay, so now I have the original hardware. We're going to keep this original piece, but I do not like the color. I think the color is too warm. So I'm going to show you a dry brushing technique to make the hardware match more. So I'm going to use Autentico's Metallico in Space Gray. It's like a dark pewter color, but I'm not going to do full coverage. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some paint on the lid, get a little bit on my brush, and then I'm going to offload. And then I'm going to take the hardware and I'm just going to lightly dry brush over the piece, and it's picking up the high points and definitely cooling that original brass color down without giving it complete coverage. And I'm highlighting and accenting it. And it's going to look so much better than what was on there before. So you'll see, so this is before and this is after. And then up against the piece, so much better compared to what this was. And the Metallico does not need a sealer. We're just going to let it dry a few minutes, and then we will install the hardware, and this piece will be ready to go. Okay, just kind of, oh yeah. So, alrighty. So we'll get this installed and get this all set up and get it photographed, and you will see the final result at the very end of this video. So you can go to our website, Autentico-paint-USA. You can find our online retailers and our brick and mortar retailers there as well. You can follow us on all of our social media. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have TikTok. Just Google Autentico USA. And if you have any questions, just comment down below or send us a message, and we will be glad to help you with your next project.